July 1st, 1863. The air hung thick with the promise of bloodshed as Robert E. A. Lee's Confederate Army, 75,000 strong and flush with victory, crossed into Pennsylvania under a blistering summer sun. This wasn't another raid, this was an all-or-nothing invasion designed to rip the Union apart at its seams. Picture the stakes. If Lee wins here, Lincoln's government collapses. If the rebels take Philadelphia, Britain and France recognize the Confederacy. If Northern morale breaks, the United States ceases to exist. And as fate would have it, all this would be decided not in some grand capital, but at a sleepy crossroads town called Gettysburg, where right now, Union Cavalry Commander John Buford is peering through field glasses at columns of dust rising on the Chambersburg pike. What happens next isn't just history. It's the closest America ever came to annihilation. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Buford's 2,500 cavalrymen dismount instantly, transforming into a thin blue line across McPherson's Ridge. They're outnumbered 10-1, but they have one secret weapon: breech-loading carbines that fire 3 times faster than Confederate muskets. As Hett's rebel division marched obliviously forward, Buford's troopers unleash hell, the first cracks of gunfire echoing across wheat fields that will soon be soaked in blood. This is no orderly battle, it's a desperate delaying action where every minute counts. Buford's message to Meade is frantic: asterisk, the devil's to pay, send infantry now. Meanwhile, Lee arrives on Seminary Ridge, squinting through the smoke. He didn't want to fight here, not yet, but the iron dice of war are rolling. Asterisk, by afternoon, the fields become a slaughterhouse. Union Iron Brigade troops in black hats clash with Mississippi regiments in a furious back and forth through Herbst woods, men bayoneting each other among the peach trees. Rebel General James Archer is captured mid-swear by a 19-year-old private. In town, pandemonium erupts as Union soldiers retreat through streets, Confederates shooting them from windows. But the real horror unfolds at the railroad cut, where the 6th Wisconsin charges into 1,500 Alabamians trapped in a sunken lane. It's not combat anymore. It's butchery with rifle butts and stones. Asterisk, as dusk falls, both sides are shocked by the carnage. Lee's forces have pushed the Union back, but at terrible cost. The rebels take Gettysburg, only to realize they've won the wrong ground. Because while they celebrate, Union engineers are frantically digging trenches on Cemetery Hill, the exact position Lee needed to take today. Now it's too late. Under the cover of darkness, 20,000 fresh Union troops silently take position along the ridges, their bayonets glinting in the moonlight. Meade's entire army is converging, and Lee's great gamble just became a suicide mission. The stage is set for the most catastrophic day in American history. Dawn, July 2nd. The humid air reeks of gunpowder and open bowels as 160,000 exhausted men stir across Gettysburg's corpse-littered ridges. Lee's plan is insane and brilliant. While Union forces brace for another frontal assault, he's sending Longstreet's corps on a desperate flanking march to crush Meade's left. One problem: Union signalmen spot the movement. Colonel Strong Vincent gets the warning with his breakfast and makes a decision that will save America. Without orders, he races his brigade to a boulder-strewn hill called Little Round Top. They arrive minutes ahead of Hood's screaming Texans, so exhausted they can barely lift their rifles, but they have the high ground. Now imagine this: 350 men from Maine, many shoeless and starving, about to face 2,000 battle-hardened rebels in a fight where every second counts. Their commander? A 34-year-old former professor named Joshua Chamberlain who's never been in combat before today. What happens next isn't just war, it's raw survival played out with bayonets and rocks. The Alabamians charge up the steep slope. 3 times, each wave met with point-blank volleys that light up the twilight like strobes. Chamberlain's line starts to crumble, half his men are down, ammunition gone. Then comes the order that will echo through history: fix bayonets. Not to defend, to charge downhill into overwhelming numbers. As the 20th Maine plunges into the smoke, something impossible happens. Their wheeling maneuver catches the rebels mid-reload. It's not a battle anymore. It's a slaughterhouse of clubbed muskets and shattered skulls. 100 yards away, the 1st, Texas reaches the summit's crest, only to find Union artillery crews, firing canister shots straight into their faces at 10 paces. The hillside becomes a waterfall of tumbling bodies. Meanwhile, at the wheat field, the fighting descends into pure chaos. 5 Union and Confederate brigades collide in 20 acres of hell. Men shoot each other at 5 paces. Officers dueling with sabers, wounded drowning in the creek. The 114th Pennsylvania, Zouaves in red turbans, fights back-to-back with the 5th. Michigan in a swirling melee where no one knows the front line. In 90 minutes, 4,000 men fall. The field so thick with bodies that later, survivors say you could walk across without touching ground. But Lee's masterstroke is still coming, asterisk, asterisk, at dusk. 15,000 fresh Confederates smash into Cemetery Ridge's center. Union artillery crews abandon their guns. Officers scream incoherent orders. For one terrifying moment, the entire Union line buckles, until a berserk General Winfield Scott Hancock rides straight into the gunfire, saber raised, bellowing, "You will hold this position or die here." His men lock bayonets just as the rebel tide reaches them. The collision sounds like a freight wreck, bone and steel meeting at full sprint. Against all odds, they hold asterisk as midnight falls. The fields moan with 15,000 fresh casualties. Lee's gamble has failed, but tomorrow he'll try something even more reckless. Because right now, in a candlelit tent, he's scribbling orders for Pickett's charge. July 3, 1863, noon. A deathly hush falls over Cemetery Ridge as 12,500 Confederate soldiers form a line nearly a mile wide, their bayonets catching the sun like a shimmering wave of steel. The temperature hits 87 degrees. Men are already collapsing from heat stroke before the order comes. Then, at 1:07 p.m., the largest artillery barrage ever seen on American soil erupts, minus 170 Confederate guns thunder simultaneously, shaking the earth for miles. For 90 straight minutes, 3,000 shells per minute scream across the sky, obliterating Union positions in a storm of dirt and shrapnel. But there's a horrific miscalculation. Most shots sail high. Hidden behind stone walls, the Union infantry huddles intact while their own artillery deliberately falls silent, a feigned retreat to lure Lee into catastrophe. Then at 3 p.m., the unthinkable order echoes across the Confederate lines, "Advance!" What follows isn't a battle. It's the closest thing to mass suicide the Civil War would ever see. Pickett's charge is about to begin, and with it, the last chance to destroy America. The rebel lines step off with eerie precision, flags snapping in the breeze as they march across nearly a mile of open fields. Union soldiers later recount the surreal beauty of it, like watching a parade march straight into hell. At 800 yards, Federal artillery switches to canister shot. Each blast now a shotgun spray of 500 iron balls. Entire Confederate companies disappear in pink mists. At 300 yards, Union infantry rise from behind stone walls. Their volleys so perfectly timed the sound resembles tearing canvas. Bodies pile in heaps. Wounded men use corpses as breastworks. Yet somehow, through smoke and flying viscera, General Lewis Armistead leads 150 Virginians over the wall at the angle, planting his sword in a Union cannon in the high-water mark of the Confederacy. For 3 violent minutes, hand-to-hand fighting erupts as rebels briefly breach the center. Then the trap springs shut, Union reinforcements swarm in from both flanks while artillery enfilades the survivors from Little Round Top, what was once. An army becomes a panicked mob, men running, crawling, dragging shattered comrades through blood-soaked wheat. The few who make it back to Confederate lines bring unimaginable horror stories. A soldier carrying his own severed arm, boys begging for death in pools of their own intestines, entire regiments wiped out to the last man. Of the 47 Confederate field officers who started the charge, 45 are dead or wounded. Lee rides out to meet the shattered remnants, repeating "it's all my fault" as ambulances cart away what's left of his army. But here's what history books miss. The Union almost lost this too. As the smoke clears, General Meade refuses to counterattack. His own army is too battered, too shell-shocked. For 2 more hours, the Confederates remain vulnerable, but the Union can't press the advantage. That night, under cover of a biblical thunderstorm, Lee's army slips away. The war will drag on for 2 more brutal years because of this single hesitation. Meanwhile, in a nearby field hospital, a wounded Confederate colonel whispers his dying words to a Union doctor. "Tell my family, I saw the Union stand." July 4th, 1863. A cold rain washes over Gettysburg as dawn reveals a nightmare landscape. Nearly 8,000 corpses blowed in the summer heat, their pockets picked by scavengers. Another 27,000 wounded men scream from makeshift hospitals where surgeons work knee-deep in severed limbs. The stench is so unbearable even vultures retreat. Yet amid this hellscape, something unprecedented happens. Not a single shot is fired. For the first time in the war, Lee's army cannot attack. His gamble has failed catastrophically. 28,000 rebels are dead, wounded, or missing, a third of his force, while Meade's Union army still holds the high ground. But what happens next will shock you. Instead of crushing Lee's trapped army, Meade hesitates. As Confederate wagons slither south through the storm, Lincoln pounds his desk in the White House, screaming at telegrams, "We had them! The war was right there." This isn't just a retreat. It's the birth of America's greatest historical what-if. Because Gettysburg didn't end the Civil War, it guaranteed 2 more years of slaughter. The aftermath unfolds with brutal irony. On the very day Lee retreats, the Confederacy suffers another mortal blow 1,000 miles west. Vicksburg surrenders to Grant, giving the Union total control of the Mississippi. Yet in Pennsylvania, Meade's exhausted army barely pursues. Why? The numbers tell the story. The Union suffered 23,000 casualties, too. Entire brigades ceased to exist. The 1st Minnesota lost 82% of its men in 5 minutes. When Lincoln finally receives Meade's victory dispatch, he scribbles angrily in the margin, "Our army held the war in the palm of their hand ... and would not close it?" The truth is uglier. After 3 days of carnage, most soldiers on both sides simply couldn't lift their rifles. Meanwhile, the myths begin instantly. Southern papers claim Gettysburg was a strategic withdrawal, while Northern editors call it divine judgment. But the real story lies in the mud where 37,000 rifles litter the fields, most still loaded. Forensic evidence shows soldiers were literally too terrified to stop and reload. In hospitals, a new sound haunts surgeons, the Gettysburg hum, a chorus of dying men imitating buzzing flies to get water. When Lincoln arrives weeks later to dedicate the cemetery, his 2-minute speech is met with silence. The crowd expected a longer oration. The Gettysburg Address won't become legendary until after his assassination. Here's the chilling reality. Most miss **** Gettysburg didn't make Union victory inevitable. It made Confederate defeat irreversible. The South never again threatens Northern soil, but the war's bloodiest campaigns still lie ahead. Chattanooga, the Wilderness, Petersburg. Those 3 days in Pennsylvania didn't just change the war, they transformed America from a collection of states into a singular nation. And when the last veteran dies in 1956, his final words aren't about glory or flags, but about the smell of rotting flesh at the angle. This was the battle that saved and haunted America forever. If this glimpse into America's darkest hours gripped you, don't let the algorithm bury history. Smash the like button to tell YouTube this content matters. Subscribe and hit the bell to join us for the next chapter. We're exposing Sherman's march in a way no textbook dared. Share this with someone who thinks they know the Civil War. Then watch them rethink everything.